Ми повернулись і готові.
So we have come back, so we're ready to go on with the International Forum of Cultural Diplomacy. We'll have a very interesting and practical panel now, which will be devoted to the best practices of cultural diplomacy during the crisis. We have invited to this panel for the participants the representatives of different institutions of cultural diplomacy from various countries, and they will be able to share their practical experience with you, how they overcame the current crisis or maybe any other crisis, which projects they implemented in the cultural diplomacy sphere. Let us listen to them and see what we could borrow from them, what we could study, and which experience we could share on our own side. The moderator of this discussion is Tetyana Filevska, the creative director of the Ukrainian Institute. I'm giving the floor to her. Hello.
Hello, everyone. We will now begin our first panel of today's forum, and together with representatives of 5 international cultural institutions, we will discuss how crisis changes the practices of cultural diplomacy. And we are honored to have here with us in Kyiv, offline, Dr. Ulf Hausbrandt, director of the Austrian Cultural Forum in Kyiv, and Volodymyr Sheiko, Director General of the Ukrainian Institute. And online we have live from Vilnius, from Lithuania, Aušrinė Žilinskienė, the Director of the Lithuanian Cultural Institute. Hi, Aušrinė. And we have Dr. Ondřej Černý, Director General of the Czech Centers, live from Prague. And we have Mr. Melih Barut, the director at GDPNet at Yunus Emre Institute, Turkey, live from Ankara. Hello, everyone. And the topic that we are going to discuss today is actually the optimistic one. So what are actually the best practices of cultural diplomacy and intercultural cooperation in the time of crisis? If there are any, we will find out. Of course, policy and strategy is crucial, it's super important. But on the level of implementation, every strategy and policy goes through the reality check. And this is when the reality turns our assumptions into real practices of the ones that are working and the ones that aren't really. And our talk will be built in, first we will hear short presentations of every participant. So we will have 5 to 7 minutes for everyone to showcase basically their practices. I will ask the participants to pay attention to the timing because we still want to continue with the live discussion. And I'm sure we will be followed by many questions from the audience. And I would like first to invite Dr. Ulf Hausbrandt, director of the Austrian Cultural Forum in Kyiv. And Ulf is also the president of UNIC Ukraine, so maybe we will have the chance to talk not only about the Austrian cultural practices, but also about the European. Ulf.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning from Kyiv to everybody who's watching us. It's my pleasure really to participate in this. I think it's an extremely important event. It's maybe in times of crisis more important than ever, and so I'm very happy to contribute to this. Can we start with the presentation? All right, yeah. Cultural diplomacy in times of crisis, the Austrian experience. Over the next couple of minutes, I'll try to give you an overview, I have to say, of what we have been doing, both on national level as well as in the field here in Kyiv. As time is too short, I cannot give you a complete picture, but I'll try to get the essence out of it. When the crisis first hit, it certainly turned the world of cultural diplomacy upside down. Austria is no exception, and what we saw first was a world full of challenges and very few opportunities. Meanwhile, the picture has changed. And along the way, we've discovered that actually this is not just a world of challenges, but also opportunities. Like, we strongly believe that any crisis also offers opportunities, and COVID is no exception. What I want to discuss here is what we did when the crisis first hit. We first said, what is actually our ultimate goal in this situation? And the answer to this was, we want to stay connected. It sounds self-evident, but it's not necessarily self-evident, because we could have said also, we want to continue to communicate certain contents. So in our case, we said, connection is more important than contents. And cultural diplomacy to us is all about successful communication. Now, if we want to communicate successfully in these times, we need to understand ourselves, the sender. We need to understand the communication channels we're dealing with, and especially we need to understand our audience. Let me start with the audience. We ask ourselves, who is our audience? Who are the various segments of our audience? And then also, how is our audience doing? What is their mindset? Is it the same or is it different? And regarding communication channels, we ask ourselves, how can we reach the audience? Which channels are available and which channels are suitable for what contents? Now, in the case of Ukraine, where Facebook is hugely popular, of course, the obvious answer would be Facebook. But this, we believe, is not the entire story. We realized, for example, that we have a certain segment of our audience which reads their emails, but they are not on Facebook. And hence we decided that we have to add a newsletter to our communication channels in order to reach these people. This is very, very important. Content matters. A crisis, we believe, changes mindsets. People have more worries, they have more fears, they're more stressed, and accordingly they have a reduced attention span, they have less focus, and they have, in doubt, less or a reduced intellectual appetite. We realized that what may be stimulating in terms of contents and interesting in good times may be too heavy in times of existential worries. Accordingly, we said, for the time being at least, we're going to stay away from highly intellectual contents. We will not be too abstract. We will stay away from contentious issues and from contents that is crisis and conflict focused. Instead, we said we want to produce contents that is positive, that gives perspectives, that creates hope, and that discusses opportunities. Now, maybe a brief word on digital fatigue. Yes, of course, it's true. We all are facing this problem. But our experience is the people, yes, they are tired of this crisis, but they are not tired of humanity. And when we produce contents that bears that in mind, we can still reach an audience. Just a quick example, we did Austrian Days online 2 weeks ago, which was a huge success because we programmed it accordingly. We had more than 40,000 people that we could reach, 500 new followers on Facebook, and 400 subscribers to our newly launched newsletter. From what I've said so far, it follows already that one does not fit all. One should say one approach does not fit all. And accordingly, from the very beginning, we decided to have a decentralized, unbureaucratic crisis response. That is necessary because we operate on a global basis, but we're dealing with different cultures, we're dealing with different mentalities, we're dealing with different language barriers, and so on and so forth, even with different social media preferences and COVID restrictions. The MFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Vienna, plays an important role, of course, in this approach. And one important aspect is budget stability. From the beginning, headquarters communicated to us, don't worry, the budget is secure, you can do your programming, you can make your adjustments, you don't have to be afraid that you will lose budget. This is important for us, for our work. It's also important, of course, for the artists that we support. The second point, take action. Headquarters has been extremely fast in their decision making, extremely unbureaucratic and extremely forthcoming. Important role of headquarters is framework agreements. Of course, where it's necessary or where it's advantageous, the MFA in Vienna would conclude framework agreements with third-party content providers, for example, that could be film distributors or the Vienna State Opera, that gives us easy and quick and unbureaucratic access to these contents. And the MFA, of course, also plays an important role in internal communications and in external communications. They make sure that we can share the experience and that the general public also learns about our activities. For us, it's keep calm and design individual programs. I understand that I don't have enough time to talk about the activities of the Cultural Forum Kyiv. That is a pity, but I hand back to Tetyana.
Thank you, Ulf. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. We will have this time during our live discussion, I'm sure. Thank you so much. And now I would like to move on from Austria to Lithuania and give the word to Aušrinė.
Hello, thank you, Tetyana. So I will try to share my screen and my slides. Yeah. I see the Czech slides instead of mine. So just a moment, share, and yes. Okay. I hope everything is fine and I can start. So hello to everyone, good morning to the panelists and everyone beyond the screens. The COVID pandemic caused isolation as well as many restrictions and boundaries, the reducing of programs and suspension of artist mobility. The coronavirus slammed the door for artists to live meetings with fans of their works. The mobility and exchange are the keywords for the cultural relations. How to deal with it when the artists are locked at home? Will the restricted freedom of movement of artists destroy the idea of intercultural dialogue? Before we start to panic, please have a look at the side effect of the pandemic. The pandemic gave us gulps of fresh air, both in the literal and metaphorical senses. Instead of traveling labyrinths of the airports, we've been walking through parks and forests. It's quite pleasant to imagine an empty Venice where dolphins swim through its canals. I want to believe that for some moment, even if very short one, the earth became a better place to live for its creations. I'm not naive, and I think we will want to win something back as soon as it's possible. We do want to have live performances and live meeting and chatting again. But some solutions started to exercise during the lockdown we should keep for the future. Among others, the digitalization of culture and the higher scale of its accessibility. But before to go to the more concrete examples of new practices and projects recently implemented by the Lithuanian Culture Institute, I would like to give you a little bit of the Lithuanian context. 3 decades ago, Lithuania, small and unknown to the world country, surprised the world when in just a few years was able to not only shake but completely destroy a monolith of the Soviet Union. People living and creating in Lithuania today have fundamentally changed their thinking, habits and ways of working, and sometimes even their values and principles. The driving force of Lithuanian culture is the personalities of the creators. Today, a new generation of artists that came of age in free Lithuania is working in Lithuania and on the international scene. The recognition and success of Lithuanian artists, the Golden Lion at the Venice Biennale for Sun and Sea, the world's best female opera soloist, Asmik Grigorian, the world's best female conductor, Mirka Gražinytė Tyla, renowned theater and film directors inspire others on their path. In the last decade, significant changes have taken place in the cultural and financing system in Lithuania. In 2012, the Lithuanian Film Center was founded, strengthening the competitiveness of the film sector. Currently, Lithuania is one of the most attractive places for filmmakers to realize their ideas. The establishment of the Lithuanian Council for Culture facilitated the formation of the self-government of the cultural community and the cultural management system based on the principles of arm's length distance. The Lithuanian Culture Institute, renewed in 2014, is a guarantor of the internationality of Lithuanian culture. The Lithuanian Culture Institute is a rather small institution with very limited resources, and we work from Vilnius, having no branches beyond Lithuania. On the other hand, we have strengthened our capacities by building very tense collaboration with the net of the cultural attaches residing in different countries. They have programs and budget which is allocated for the cultural attaches activities, and the attaches are very much supportive of designing and implementing our projects in the countries of their residence. We launched new programs, organized festivals and focused presentations, counting growing audiences and likes on social medias, and we have forgotten that there are things which don't depend on our planning and which we cannot change. And then came 2020, and we confronted the corona crisis, and there we were witnessing the ability of the creative sector to adapt quickly to a new reality. Exhibitions in the windows and on the streets, concerts from the balconies, live performances from the private bedroom or kitchen. Many ideas and new products came from a wish to show the solidarity with the artists who were left without audiences and without incomes. The Lithuanian Culture Institute also decided to open virtual windows and has invited Lithuanian artists to take over its accounts on the social networks, Facebook and Instagram. As many as 65 photographers, writers, composers, painters, illustrators, dancers from various and collective from various fields of art presented their work to the virtual international community that has been following the Institute's activities. We gave our stage to those who needed it the most at the moment, and we are truly very glad that artists welcomed our idea with such enthusiasm. For the London Design Week, we worked on the excellent project where 13 countries showcased its selected design collections in the Adorno Digital Gallery. The collections attracted broader audiences and media interest. I think that the digital platforms can be even more democratic in this way. In the digital platforms, artworks itself are pointed out and not the expensive cover. By saying that, I mean that in the real shows, the pavilions compete in square meters, expose expensive solutions of designing and lighting, and countries with less resources has less chance to break through. The Lithuanian Art Digital Showcases and pitching sessions mark a new chapter in the Lithuanian Culture Institute's professional study visit program. The program has been adapted to the COVID pandemic format by offering newly produced virtual content and networking possibilities with in-person visits to Lithuania proposed for the future. To closing up, we have to look into the future and post-pandemic world. Today, we should vote for the international cultural exchange even more. To keep trust and spirit of cooperation in the post-pandemic world, to remove boundaries in our heads when the physical borders are opened again. Thank you for your attention, and please look at our webpage for more information on the Lithuanian Cultural Institute and for more contacts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being so precise in timing. And I really find many things recalling to our Ukrainian experience. I'm sure we will have to discuss that later. And I would like to invite Dr. Ondřej Černý, the Director General for the Czech Centers, now with his presentation. Mr. Ondřej?
Yeah, hello. That's it. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I would like. I will be just now short. That means on the first, we should identify our needs and prepare the condition for the online project in the institutions. What is important is to strengthen the network identity, then find the communication platforms. We decided to have the Microsoft Teams for the project management and the Zoom for the communication. And then to make an internal call for online network project. It's very important because we tried to have real to be all together. That means to don't have this tension between you and we, between the headquarters and the branches. The preparatory phase of the online project was mid-April and mid-May, and we expected that the implementation phase will be only till end of August, but we can see that it's real necessary to follow with all the online projects till end of this year. What are the parameters of the network projects? For the implementation, at least by 5 branches, that's the condition, one condition. Then the topic should correspond with the program framework, our program priorities and strategy. United visual form, and naturally it's necessary to have a coordinator of the project. Important for this network identity is parity financing. That means not only financing of the network project from the headquarters, but from the budget of branches too. Then we came to the creation of this network projects. We headquarters make a package of 30 projects, and the directors voted then for the project, and they selected 20 projects, and each branch implements on average 7 projects of that. Important experience from this whole thing. Connection with a strong partner. One example, Prague Spring is a very famous Czech music festival. We cross-posted the concert to the world, but important is that the branch, I don't know, the Czech Center in London, find a partner here who put it in the program, this cross-putting. That's very important because then you can go real into the culture infrastructure of the country. Use the existing platform, seize the moment. That means find some topic which are connected with the COVID stories. For example, photo exhibition of silent cities or Corona stories by Czech writers. We have used the existing projects and unite all this thing from the marketing point of view under the one hashtag Czech culture to the world. And now only one example of one successful network project. It was the Global Science Cafe series of the interviews of Czech scientists. You can see the statistic here. It was cross-posted by 20 Czech centers. Only one remark: science is very important for us in the sense of the presentation of the results of science and of the successes of Czech science. Because we are a culture institute, for us it's important to consider the culture in this wide feature as the European Union does. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Mr. Melih Barut from Yunus Emre Institute in Ankara to present the crisis and conflict best practices in Turkey. Please turn on your microphone. I think you're still muted. While the rest, please keep your microphones muted. Can you say something?
Yeah, now I turned my mic. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Great. So let's start with my presentation. Okay. Assuming that you are viewing my presentation, can you see that?
Not yet.
Hello?
Not yet.
Not yet? No,
Not yet. Try again.
Now?
Yes, it's there. Great. Just start the presentation.
Presentation mode. Okay.
Great.
Okay. Can you see my presentation now?
Sure, perfectly.
Okay. Well, before I start, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude and appreciation to the Ukrainian Institute, especially for Volodymyr. I guess we know each other from Qatar, Global Public Diplomacy Network, and to my moderator, Ms. Tetyana Filevska. And I should admit that this is a great opportunity in times of crisis like COVID. Well, my presentation. Oh, I have to jump back and forth, I guess. There is my presentation. Okay. So in this session, I will talk about a little bit on the public diplomacy and define what cultural diplomacy is, and we will all together explore the natural crisis. So in my presentation, I have divided the crisis into two different parts. One for natural crisis, as in the case of COVID, and the second one is the violence-oriented, conflict-oriented crisis. Then we will talk about that one, and I will little bit provide you some information about the Turkish interpretation of public diplomacy, Turkish interpretation of cultural diplomacy, and I will conclude with two practices. I guess I cannot say the best practices since I am the part of these practices. So I guess you will love that. So public diplomacy, as a definition, public diplomacy, this is the mainstream definition. Public diplomacy is the coordination and systematic synchronization of the communication and engagement capabilities of a government with the objective of influencing foreign audiences in line with the national strategic priorities, or I should say interests. As you see, there are many forms of public diplomacy. Now today we are talking about the cultural diplomacy, science diplomacy, as my previous colleague, my colleague mentioned. The science diplomacy is also an important part of this puzzle. Sports diplomacy, gastro diplomacy, entrepreneurial diplomacy, education diplomacy, military diplomacy, which is amazing, a separate field for the safety, stability, and securitization of the regions, and interfaith diplomacy. And now that we are talking about the COVID, this is the health diplomacy. So, well, orchestration of the strategic communication and engagement activities through the use of cultural assets can be defined as the cultural diplomacy. I mean, if you're engaging with your target audiences through your music, through fine arts, through performing arts, through dances, through movies, through theaters, through history and literature, that means that you are conducting cultural diplomacy efforts. Well, in order to create the best desired effects through the cultural diplomacy efforts, the engagement activities need to be performed at the right time, at the right place, with the right content. You know, the content is the king. So if you cannot bring all these three elements in any effort, but unfortunately you are doomed to failure. So it will cost you money, and it will cost you your resources in terms of money, in terms of man time, in terms of your efforts. So you have to bring all these together. If we define the crisis, if you look at the definition of the crisis, disruption of the stability by the changeovers. In the case of COVID, the changeover is all about the health. I mean, we are all jailed in our houses. So disruption of stability by changeovers in political ecosystem, social ecosystems, economic ecosystems, technological ecosystems of the life, environmental ecosystems of the life, and the legal ecosystems of the life. And we all know that these changeovers adversely affect the life of the humans. Now, in the first session, I will talk about a little bit about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In times of crisis, people shrink back to their survival needs, basic needs, security, health, finances, and they only care about their food, their water to drink. So if you are designing a cultural diplomacy effort, you have to concentrate on this. Now I will give you two examples. The first one is about the war in Syria. So okay, I have 3 minutes, so I will skip this part then. Then in this Syria, Turkey geostrategically and geopolitically located very close to the conflict. So we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to engage with the people of the future starting from now. So my suggestion is that if there is a violence-oriented crisis, you can only conduct your cultural and public diplomacy efforts in the sector 1 and in the sector 3 in order to prevent the potential future crisis. So I will now provide you a video about this. Can you see? Okay then. The other one shortly is all about the covidioscope. Covidioscope is the artistic expression of the pandemic. If you click on the link here, you will see how people all around the world and embracing the.
I'm sorry, Melih, you have to return back the presentation. We can't see you or your presentation.
You can't see me, and neither myself nor my presentation.
Nope.
Oh, okay, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, you're back now, thank you.
more important than
Okay,
ever. And what we find is that in
Anyway, so can you see me right now?
Yes, you're back.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, then I will close by saying that Covidoscope website is designed and developed by Yunus Emre, our colleagues at Yunus Emre Institute. This is a great opportunity for you to go and visit there. How the people all around the world are taking pandemic from their own perspectives, and this site is taking from the 7 emotional perspectives about the developments of the pandemic. So I guess I'm totally done with it in terms of the time. So thank you very much for your patience, and I'm deeply sorry for the technical inconveniences.
Thank you. The online life and work has to do with obstacles, like every other. Thank you so much. And the closing presentation will be from the hosting institution, from the Ukrainian Institute, as we also went our way through the crisis, and we would like to share our experience and practices. Volodymyr, the word to you.
Thank you, Tanya. And first of all, I would like to say hello to my fellow colleagues from other cultural institutions in the region, I have to confess I do miss our time with Melih in Qatar or with Ondřej in Prague, and of course I miss socializing with Ulf here in Kyiv, and really good to meet you, Aušrinė, over this remote connection. So thank you all for joining this session. And I have to say that we all share a very bumpy road, and that's not a secret to anyone. And it was really good to see really strong examples from your presentations of very creative approach to programming, or being able to work on tight budgets and tight deadlines, and not losing touch with your audiences, or working with very difficult themes that your respective countries may be going through. And I think this is something we also wanted to talk about in our presentation of the Ukrainian Institute. And thank you. We will not talk about digital formats in these presentations, because yes, of course, we as an institution had to really rewrite our plan for 2020 in a very short time frame. And yes, we switched quite a few projects to online or hybrid formats, and in many cases it really worked out, because we managed to increase the audience reach through digital platforms. We were able to maintain that human interaction with our audiences that is essential for cultural relations and cultural diplomacy. But I want to focus on a few other examples of how our programming took a slightly different route this time as a response to the COVID-19 crisis. We were probably the only institution of the 5 institutions represented in this panel today that actually experienced budget cuts as the result of the pandemic, and our budget went down by 40% this year, and we're still struggling to secure our budget for next year. In a way, this prompted us to think what we want to do to maximize our meaningful and lasting impact that the cultural relations should have. Because it's not just about one-off wide outreach digital projects that will sometimes come and go, but it's also about building a very strong outline and baseline for further work, because the pandemic will eventually end, and we will need to enter the brand new world equipped with skills, with projects, with experiences, with some tools that will make this transition much easier for us and for audiences alike. So So the formats I'm going to show briefly to you today may not be immediately spectacular, but I think they have been overlooked in Ukraine for quite some time. And with these projects, we're trying to bridge the gap that has been, in Ukraine for about 30 years of our independence, and with these projects we are helping to bridge some gaps and plug some gaps that will help solve some systemic challenges the cultural diplomacy in Ukraine is facing today. So the first example is research, and probably thanks to pandemic, we were able to focus much more on research of our audiences and of perceptions of Ukraine internationally in 7 countries this year. So this research will be out and about in December. And the slide in front of you is another piece of research that we commissioned to learn how Ukraine actually is portrayed in leading European media with regard to key geopolitical and historical events that Europe and the world has been going through in the 20th century. And these are events and these are narratives that are shaping, subtly shaping or overtly shaping international perceptions of Ukraine. And for the first time, we actually want to know in a very comprehensive way what they are and how then decision makers in Ukraine can use these outcomes of this research to influence and to reshape Ukrainian information policies and the efforts that are being done by Ukrainian diplomatic missions internationally. We launched a project called Culinary Diplomacy or Gastro-diplomacy, which reflects rather a new shift in food studies across the world, whereby food is not only seen as a entertainment or a subject of enjoyment, but rather a thing that can tell infinite stories about a country, its culture, its history, its migration, its regional diversity, and that storytelling we put into this great research and publication that will be out by the end of this year, which will be shared through over 100 Ukrainian diplomatic missions internationally, who of course are natural partners for us, who can also help amplify this storytelling through the exciting domain in world of food. We worked also with the subject matter of the souvenir and the tradition of exchanging presents, which is one of the most ancient traditions in human-to-human relations. And we opened up this as an open call for contemporary designers who reimagined some of the iconic symbols of Ukrainian culture, both contemporary and classical and folklore culture, and these will be then transformed into a series of ready-made products or ready to be commissioned souvenirs and gifts that Ukrainian public service organizations and also diplomatic missions and indeed the Ukrainian Institute in our work could then use to promote some of the best visual culture Ukraine has to offer and indeed be very contemporary in how we present ourselves through gifts. Another program is called the Ukrainian Studies Program, named after a famous Ukrainian-American scholar, Ivan Lysak-Rudnitsky. And this program supports Ukrainian studies and scholarly research pertaining to Ukraine internationally, because we believe that it is through scholarly studies that a lot of knowledge about a country is generated and then spread through media, through institutions, and it influences the way a country is being seen internationally. And we made a first step to support that domain of work through using public funds. Another example is a chamber music anthology that we have commissioned and we will publish later this year. And it is a collection of music pieces written by some of the most famous contemporary Ukrainian musicians who were active starting from the 1960s and form a great oeuvre of Ukrainian avant-garde and contemporary classical music that will be distributed to international music institutions, conductors, orchestras to popularize that largely unknown oeuvre of the Ukrainian music culture. Similarly, we'll do a music catalog of contemporary musicians who are active today in mainstream jazz and academic music, and we will use that great catalog as a recommendation to music producers, to selectors of music festivals and venue managers who will also, help Ukrainian musicians take over the international music scene. I would like to stop here. I'm out of time, and I hope this gives you a perspective on sort of the flip side of the creative approaches that contemporary cultural diplomacy can take today. Thank you for the attention, and we'll be back for questions, I suppose.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now we have an overview of the cultural diplomacy and intercultural relations from Central and Eastern Europe, from Austria, Lithuania to Turkey, with Ukraine in the center. Not accidentally, we invited the representatives of the institutes that are either neighbors of Ukraine or close countries, that we can somehow relate to the experience of. And from what we have already heard, I think we have a lot of common insights and things to share and to discuss, and it's a great opportunity to have this chance to talk now. We actually have quite many questions from the audience already, but I would like to start with a few questions myself as a privileged moderator of this discussion. And my first question, actually it's open to all the participants, but I would like to first ask to reply Mr. Ondřej Černý, because this is something that was mentioned during our preliminary talk when we prepared for this discussion. And the question is, what are the lessons of this particular pandemic crisis for our work, for our practices? So are there things that we will take with us to the normal life if that one ever happens?
Thank you for the floor. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So you said on the beginning that we should, and I think it's okay to should see the things in the optimistic way. And from this point of view, I think that the corona crisis is real, some kind of the challenge. And going through a crisis means becoming more resistant to the future shocks of all kinds, not including political ones. And that's one thing. Second, flexibility. Another profit from the COVID crisis. That means it can strengthen our ability to quickly change forms and contents, while it is because it is necessary in some situation. From another point of view, we should consider that the cultural diplomacy is integral part of the material and spiritual basis of today's world, and it can be assumed that this base will change, and we will hopefully be better prepared for these changes. When I speak about the changes of this narrative and of this values, I think that we should in the future probably come to the situation that we can really see the limits of our material growth, and we should then consider the change of and shift our values and find the new way. And I think that a cultural diplomacy can be a very good mediator for these changes. Because cultural diplomacy is real a great connection between the nations and people in the conflict situation and in the crisis situation. So it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Ulf, you wanted to add?
Well, to us, this crisis has been like a catalyst. And in many regards, what we're seeing now is not new, but it's just accelerated. And of course, what I'm referring to is the digital age. I mean, digitalization started long before COVID, and it will continue after that. So what we're seeing now, just with a higher speed, is the move towards everything being digital. And one way or another, whether we like it or not, we have to deal with that. And I believe the opportunity is that we learn to build a second pillar, meaning that even after this crisis is over, we will not discard what we develop now, all these digital formats, but we'll keep it as an additional format in parallel to hopefully offline events.
Thank you. Anyone wants to refer to this question? Lessons learned? What we take with us to the new normal? Aušrinė?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I can just repeat what I said before, that when confronting any crisis, the importance of culture and art is revealed. So, and we have witnessed during the COVID crisis the ability of creative sector to adapt very quickly. And I mean by that not only artists and artistical organizations, but also artistical management, like our institutions, ourselves. We didn't stop our programs fully. We adapted them to new conditions. And I agree that the digitalization of culture caught a new way in that kind, and we caught it up. What was maybe important to and has to be done, but we did it in very short time because of the crisis. Now we have to look forward, and we see that this digital content, its overflow of digital contents, is not necessarily the best way for culture, but we have to think all the time about the same as in real with dealing with real content. That most important thing is equality. A good quality of content, also in the digital format, it's the crucial thing. So I think we have learned that, and we now we are not about producing content as such, but we are thinking about how to make a very qualitative, very relevant content to our audiences. So thank you.
Thank you. I think what we have just heard is something that's very common issue for all institutions around the globe who are dealing with intercultural relations and cultural diplomacy. But when we were thinking about this particular panel and the topic of the forum, we were thinking about crisis and uncertainties in a very general way. So let's say not only the pandemic can be the problem or the crisis or the reason for the crisis. And it was interesting in one of the discussion before the forum, one of our colleagues mentioned that we will talk about culture in times of crisis, which is now common for Europe and which has always been for Ukraine. So Ukrainian culture, like it was in crisis for almost 30 years now, yeah. And if we are not talking longer back in culture in older centuries. But I would like to turn the second question to Volodymyr and to Melih, if I may, and ask about different type of crisis, about the conflicts, because Ukraine is acting Ukrainian Institute is acting in the conditions of acting war, and Melih just showed us an example how they work with the conflict based on the war in Syria. So my question would be, what can culture do in the situation of the conflict that no other means can do?
I think you're absolutely right, Tanya, about saying that conflict is the new normal, and indeed I would agree with Ulf completely that hardly anything that we are now going through is new. Yes, the COVID-19 pandemic has amplified and put up some of the most acute challenges that culture and cultural diplomacy has been facing in Ukraine or indeed elsewhere in the world. But none of these things, or hardly any of these things, are new to us. We're just dealing with them in a very different way these days. And in terms of conflict, yes, Ukraine has been at war for the past 6 years, and conflict has become an integral, sadly, part of our everyday life. And quite often we hear voices that say, look, culture is a luxury, cultural diplomacy is a luxury in the days whereby medicine or issues of internally displaced people, or the news about new deaths in the east of Ukraine coming to us through media every day. In these times, culture is a luxury, and we always say very firmly that no, it's not a luxury. It's an essential way to deal with crisis. It's an essential way to make sense of those crises and to communicate those crises in a meaningful way internationally, because otherwise these terrible things that are happening all over the world in many, many countries will be reduced to catchy news headlines, and all the people stories that are actually behind those tragic events will be lost in translation. And I think it's the job for cultural diplomacy to make sense of these stories, to make those stories visible, to tell these stories to an international audience, and to engage in a meaningful dialogue about what it means for people, for regular people, to live in a troubled times, to live in the middle of a battleground, or what it means for their everyday lives to be changed through conflict, and no one knows if there is a way back to the normality of the previous years. And I think it's a very huge mandate to take on for our institutions represented here in this panel, and I can't really stress enough how important cultural relations and cultural diplomacy is in the case of Ukraine, for example, to tell those voices through theater, through literature, through film, documentary film, through other artistic interventions internationally, because only through that medium, priceless medium, we can ourselves make sense of what's happening in Ukraine today, but also to take that message across and earn trust and earn understanding and earn sympathy from our partners and indeed regular people internationally. So that's my probably not so brief, but a very fundamental response to this, enthusiastic response. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, and now I would like to ask Melih to answer the same.
Well, shortly. I mean, we have to create platform always for communication. I mean, Turkey, as I have already mentioned geopolitically and geostrategically located in the middle of the conflicts. Remember the past. I mean, Iraq and Iran war, the war in Syria right now, and terrorism all around. So I mean, we have to make use of communicate. We have to make use of culture as a tool for extended communication. So I mean, currently in the project that I have displayed in my session. I mean, so what is how you are thinking? Are you thinking short term and making your decision in accordance with this short term inputs, middle term inputs, and long term inputs? So we have to touch to the lives of those kids. We have to train them. We have to educate them. We have to provide them opportunity for better future. Otherwise, if we can't do that, this is not going to be. This is not only going to be our problem. I mean, people are moving all around the world, so they have to be ready for the future, ready for the better, safer, and secure future. That's why we are conducting these kind of activities. No matter whether you are in the middle of conflict, in the middle of pandemic, so we have to find a way. I mean, the show must go on. That's what we learned. Thank you.
Thank you. Ulf, I just want you to comment. I see you have...
Yeah, a quick one. Conflict certainly is also about public relations and perception. And if I may say, in the case of Ukraine, that is extremely important because you're dealing with an adversary who is traditionally very, very active and when it comes to that. With cultural diplomacy, you reach people that you cannot reach on a political level. And I believe that is extremely important and should not be underestimated. Public opinion matters, you know, and with culture you can reach people on a level, you can reach people's hearts, and this may sound trivial, but it's not, you know. That's something that is extremely important because, at least on a subconscious level, it will shape the perception people have next time they come across Ukraine or anything that's said about Ukraine. And I would go even one step further than Volodya just did. I would say it's not only important to talk about the conflict, but you can show the world that Ukraine is not just about conflict. It's not only about crisis. And I think that is something extremely important because it serves your very own interest to portray your country as something that is diverse, that is rich, and that has enormous potential, not just a victim of a conflict. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we always keep that in mind, and one of our, let's say, principles on how we communicate Ukraine is trying to go from another perspective than of being a victim in circumstances. Yes, so we are trying to overcome this position. I think, I would just like to ask and remind our audience that you can still ask your questions below the video stream, but we actually have a lot of questions already, and I think that if we want to talk over those issues, we should start now. We actually have several questions, personal questions to the participants, and I would like to start with this one. It's to Aušrinė. From one of the Ukrainian partners of the Lithuanian Cultural Institute who's done dance project with you. Do you have programs which research digital transformation in performative arts? So this is a very narrow one.
Narrow, but very complicated, I have to say. I'm not sure that I've understood right what was meant by making this question. I would suggest you could write me an email under my contact. You can find it on our website and web page, and we can discuss it further. What you mean by that? Research is quite a strong word, I have to say. Yeah, would it be a solution for that? So very concrete one issue.
Okay, we will get back with the person who asked the question to get you in touch. We have a question to Ulf. Could you comment on the role of civil society in ensuring better safety standards and development of multi-faith tolerance dialogue in Austria Austrian cities and beyond? I can imagine this question was driven by the recent events unpleasant events in Austria.
Yeah, of course. Civil society, I think in all modern societies, should hopefully play a very important role. In Austria, this is no different. I think we have a very, very healthy civil society that is very colorful and organized in many shapes and forms. And it plays, I think, in general, a very, very important role towards, shaping a society and maintaining the stability of a society. So that plays a very important role, and it's also an element, of course, that is particularly relevant in times of crisis, because it's kind of the fabric that keeps people together.
Thank you. The next question, I think, is asked to all the participants. It's actually an interesting one. Do you think that cultural diplomacy is always has? I'm sorry, I'm translating it from Ukrainian, so I need a moment. Does always cultural diplomacy have a goal to influence other countries? Doesn't cultural diplomacy have to impact people inside the country? For example, for solving the conflicts that took place or are there now? That's the tough one. Who wants to start?
I can start with that, with just some very brief reflections. I think totally cultural diplomacy is not just it doesn't just have an international dimension to it. I think there is a lot to be done through instruments offered by cultural diplomacy inside any country. And through some discussions that we've had with speakers of this forum over the past couple of days, one of the speakers said a very interesting thing, that a country should not just project a voice internationally, trying to influence indeed other nations or other communities, but invite those communities to their own respective countries for more people-to-people interactions, for actually helping people to experience the diversity and breadth of voices in their homeland. And that's also a very strong cultural diplomacy act, I think institutions can resort to if they wish. And in terms of trying to sort of make sense or solve conflicts through that interaction, I think it is in many contexts very helpful. And I've in my previous roles, I've seen a lot of successful projects, particularly in the Western Balkans region, that through that mobility, through that people-to-people interaction, countries have managed to achieve, a stronger understanding between wounded nations, particularly in the post-conflict times in the Western Balkans regions, and I think it's in a cultural diplomacy act essentially, and of course it should not be forgotten as a very important instrument.
Ulf? Yeah.
Thank you. Well, realistically, whatever we do, every project, every event also shapes public opinion, and hopefully a side effect would be, that you nurture a positive Austrian image in this case and not harm it. But as a practitioner, I may say in the case of Ukraine, we have another goal that is probably even more important, and that is to create connections, to build networks between Ukraine and the rest of Europe. We want to make sure that Ukraine moves closer to the rest of Europe, and how can we do that? By building as many networks, and networks which are vibrant and alive and kicking. This is how we can do it. Of course, there's always, when you do that, a transfer of ideas, but this is not a one-way street, it's mutual. And what we see is, when we bring creative people people together, that people, creative people in Austria, likewise benefit from ideas that are born in Ukraine. So it's not a brainwash that goes in one way. It's a mutual process. But the most important thing, once again, is networks that hopefully will make sure that Ukraine is an integral part of Europe.
Thank you. I would like to pass the mic to Mr. Czerny now. And how do you see it? Do you have your internal citizens, the Czech citizens, as your audience? Do you work with the issues that may be conflicts inside the country? Hear you, please unmute. Please unmute.
Okay. I would like to say that this simple way, which was in the past, it means some kind of the export of the ideas of Czech people to another world, is something what is quite old. What was said by Ulf is very important. Make connections, make network, make partnerships. Partnership is in fact the basis of our work. This partnership is create a partnership from both countries. That means it make influence from our side to another country, but from another country to our country too. That's one thing. Another thing is that when we create some project to the audience abroad, for example in Kyiv, in Ukraine, then the reflection of this project make some kind of the feedback for us in Czech Republic, and we can then better consider our position in the Europe, our role in the Europe, and it helps for our self-reflection. That means the Czech audience is in fact not directly involved in our activities, but is mostly in the play.
Thank you. Yes, please, Melih.
Contribution. You know, that in a strategic communication case, the communication efforts goes from governments to governments. In the case of public diplomacy, communication goes from government to the publics of the other countries. However, in the case of cultural diplomacy, that's the communication between the peoples of one country and to the peoples of another country. This is cultural diplomacy. So in that sense the civil societies and the citizen public diplomats are very, very important. What you can do as an institution like in our context, maybe we can train, educate, and provide opportunity to the people to conduct your message to the other nations as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Aušrinė?
Yeah, maybe a short contribution to that. We have, of course, very different, well, not very, but some kind of different mandates or approaches to what we are doing. As Lithuanian Culture Institute is more working with cultural relations, not cultural diplomacy as such, as our stakeholder, our Ministry of Culture at the cultural sector. So it's quite important to say that we communicate very strong and very much to our stakeholders in Lithuania. It's very important to let them know what we're doing and what are our goals and what we're planning for the future. But I wanted to point out some other issue on that, and let's say to take us back where we began by the COVID pandemic. So in this situation, the COVID pandemic, it's also very important what we're doing to vote for the international collaboration, because cultural diplomacy, cultural relations, it's about collaboration, about dialogue. And we witnessed in the beginning, especially in the beginning of the crisis, that the government policies turned towards the national approaches. And it's quite understandable. It was very important to help to deal the local sectors, to deal with the crisis, but we cannot forget the international dialogue and international cultural relations, especially in the crisis like that. We talked an hour today, or an hour or more about that. It's important to make sure that our stakeholders in our countries understand that as well.
Thank you. I would like to ask a question from my side. Of course, we still have questions from the audience, but I think this one is just almost on the tongue, and we just need to put it into words. There are definitely some good news about the crisis, and I would like to just give one example. A few days ago, I know there was a big meeting of UNIC members and of UNIC headquarters with the new elections. And there was one important decision made, that there is going to be some kind of associate membership in UNIC. It has to do with Brexit, yeah, and it has to do with membership for the British Council in the UNIC. But at the same time, this crisis, this situation that was caused by one crisis, and political crisis in Europe, let's say, gives a chance for a country like, for example, Ukraine, to become a part of this big network, an important network of international cultural institutions, you know, and to put our issues on the global agenda. How do you think, how the crises of today's world, I mean the plural crises, can affect the geopolitical culture of intercultural diplomacy and cultural diplomacy and intercultural relations? Yeah, Ulf, as a president of Ukrainian UNIC, you have to stand up for Ukraine.
Well, yeah, it's true. I'm the president of the Ukraine cluster of UNIC, but of course I can't speak for UNIC Global. I believe one of the biggest opportunities of this time is really that we've been forced to think out of the box. And well, when it comes to the future of the cooperation, you know, of EU members with the United Kingdom, even after Brexit, within the frameworks of UNIC, then we are moving, I believe, towards you know, an associate membership. What really counts in this case is the practical aspects, meaning that in practical terms it will change very little. You know, and that the UK, which has to contribute a lot, will continue to be part of this, and it serves everybody's interest. Now, when it comes to Ukraine, of course, I mean, I personally, and I have to say, this is my personal opinion, I would say, yes, that's a fantastic idea. Think out of the box, think of new forms of cooperation, but I can't talk for UNIC Global, I can't talk for everybody else. I personally would be very much in favor of that.
Then I would like to pass this question to Aušrinė, because this is, it was her who actually informed me first about this. It was in the same day when this meeting was, and actually this was the news, the good news.
I have to say that the decision about the association membership was not made yet. And I'm afraid I was misunderstood a little bit by saying that, because the question of UK and Brexit is the reason why UNIC is discussing the issue of association membership, because today we have a full membership from all EU member states or organizations from EU member states. With Brexit and UK leaving the European Union, the British Council wants to stay in as a member of UNIC, doesn't make sense. It's much difference of its full or associated member in that way, because what is already done in cooperation, cultural cooperation between partners in Europe, including British Council, is so important, and it cannot be just broken by voting for Brexit. British Council is for collaboration and for cooperation between or among other countries. So it's a normal way of raising the question how it is possible to stay a part of the European cultural community as such. But it was not further discussed about how bright the associate membership idea will be, how broad it will be, and how many other possible partners we could include. It's, I think, on quite longer discussion, and we have to start once and have a little bit patience on that.
Thank you. Maybe Ukraine will become part of European Union, and that will allow. Yes, Mr.
That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Ondřej.
I would like only add that this category of the associated membership is quite important, not only for the former. It's quite funny. We have just now former members of EU, because this one former member, UK, is so strong that it makes quite strong the whole category of the associated membership, and it can be quite important and very good useful for the probably future member of the EU. That means for Ukraine too. That means for the communication and for the work in the UNIC. I think that this category of the associate membership will in the future be stronger and stronger, and it will have in the future stronger. Yeah, it will be real stronger importance.
Thank you. Maybe Melih would like to comment also, because I would just like to point out that Melih is the head of the public diplomacy network. Actually, it's an alternative network of cultural or public diplomacy institutions that Ukrainian Institute has joined in the beginning of this year, and we are honored to be members of. And I think Lithuanian Cultural Institute is also there in this network. But Melih, how do you think how this whole crisis will influence the global map, the global network of cultural or public institutions, cultural public institutions?
Well, eventually, so most of the cultural institutions or public diplomacy institutions are almost in touch with each other, whether in the case of UNIC or in the case of Global Public Diplomacy Network. And I would like to give you some insights about the Global Public Diplomacy Network as for the former Secretary General of the network. And in the case of Global Public Diplomacy Network, it's the unity of the middle powers. That's the point. That's what makes Global Public Diplomacy Network different from UNIC. You know, in the case of UNIC, there are really strong members like UK. The point there, the countries, the cultures, not as strong as UK, can be suppressed under the pressure of the other cultural institutions. However, in the case of Global Public Diplomacy Network, we are already composed of the countries of middle powers. So that's the good side. And if we look at the future in terms of the crisis, well, things are going on. In Global Public Diplomacy Network as well, we are still organizing activities, forums, dialogues like these online. And I guess the day after tomorrow, I'm going to participate in another meeting. So things are going on. So regardless of the crisis, I mean, the communication must go on, and it's going on.
Thank you so much. I think it's the best remark for the finishage of such a wonderful discussion. I would like to thank all the participants for your contributions, for your insights, and I think we now all see that despite any crisis or conflict, culture is the only means that keeps us in communication, and keeps us in global network of human values and principles. So thank you all. We go on with our program and stay in touch. Bye-bye.